Hi,
And
Mac.
now,
Hi there.
hey Mac, how are you
Hi.
doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing all right, doing all right.
Good.
Thank you for joining us this Saturday.
Glad to.
Yeah, thank y'all for another episode of Recap with Mac. Sorry we've been absent for the past 2 weeks. The first week I was out doing my advocacy thing. And then last weekend, Mac was out doing his advocacy thing. And then Jen was packing up her son from college for summer break.
Got all my boys home for the summer.
That's great.
So what we got going on, Mac, is I know there's a lot of stuff happening within the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, there really is, and it's been revealing for me to see the evolution of the arguments that are going on with the 70H crowd. I was at the South Carolina hearing where there were several dozen kratom advocates, including me, that did not get to testify because they ran out of time. But they allowed Thomas Beckham to testify, who is a co-founder of Outpost Brands, which is one of the largest 708 manufacturers. And he sat down and told the committee a couple of important things that show how they've now shifted their narrative. First was he said, "Oh, that 2% limit really doesn't matter because we can actually work around it and we can produce products." And what he was talking about was jacking up the amount of metrogenine that's in a product in order to get to the 2% level. But when you do that, you violate and by the way, nothing new to them, you violate the standard for product safety because there is no evidence at the levels at which you have to jack up the metrogenine level in order to increase have a 7OH level that's above that 2% that is legal. But they don't care about that because they didn't have any science to back up their product when they first entered the market. And that's documented in the John Oliver piece, where embedded in that there was an interview being done by Vince Sanders, one of the other big 7OH manufacturers, when asked by an interviewer, well, what science did you have? Because people say that you didn't have any. He said, well, that's true. He said, but we have 1 million people that are using it. So his theory behind product safety is you make people guinea pigs for the product. I mean, it's astounding. And then, of course, they claim that there's been no evidence of anybody being harmed. And the reason that that's true is very simple. They conflate kratom and 7OH.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true across the board, from medical examiners, from medical doctors, to the advocates that are out there for 7OH. They all say it's all the same thing. Seven Hope Alliance with Michelle Ross is peddling that nonsense right now. And here he was testifying before a committee saying that that was the case. And obviously, big problem because the narrative is shifting. And then he said, by the way, there is no difference between 7OH and kratom. They are the same thing. That's their new game because they have to say that in order to avoid the truth, which is that 7OH is a chemically manipulated product. And what they do to justify that, we've all heard it, they say, oh, it comes from the plant. Well, A, it doesn't. It comes from the metabolism that occurs after the plant's harvested. And in trace amounts, you get this, this situation where 7OH develops in the catalyzing under heat, right? Sunlight, that's it. And then they say, and it also converts, metrogenine converts to 7OH in your liver when you ingest it. Again, true. At both levels, it is trace amounts that is almost indistinguishable and quantifiable, and they try to compare that to 7OH. 7OH, which is highly synthesized, hits your liver like a freight train. And they know that, by the way, but they try to say, oh, it's all the same. So that's one thing that I see as a real problem that we're going to have to be very strong in addressing going forward. Then you fast forward to the narrative that's been provided in Montana, for example, where you had anti-kratom advocates, and there were two categories of them. One was the director of one of the health groups in, I think it's called Riverside Health in Yellowstone County, who is one of the principal advocates for banning all kratom in the state of Montana. And he got up there and testified and said, oh, you can't distinguish between the two. They're the same thing, and that's why you have to ban everything. So they're actually borrowing from the 7OH crowd the very same argument in order to punitively penalize kratom consumers. So obviously that's a problem. And then you had the KDA entourage who testified in Montana. And as I was sitting there listening to, and I've heard it over and over again, nobody is going to say that we don't regret that people are dead. I mean, that's a fact. And when you lose a family member or a child, that grief is indescribable. But and my point is enough. Now we're going to have to get to the truth, because you hear these people that are so-called advocates to ban kratom because their son died or daughter died or family member died of kratom. Okay, prove it. Because the KDA is out there saying, don't show your autopsies. Don't, they say it publicly. Don't show your autopsies. And we know why. Because the autopsies do not support the claim that kratom killed their child or family member. They do not. We know a couple of things that are important. First is, there is no known level of toxicity at which metrogeny kills you. We know what the effects are when you take it. We know if you take too much, you're going to vomit. You're going to have a gastrointestinal effect long before you get to any kind of an acute episode that would cause a shutdown of your body in any way. And so it's always been confounding that you hear these people make these claims about, oh, well, we have it on record from the coroner or medical examiner, right? That's what they're claiming. Now, when you look at those autopsies, and this is why they don't want to show them, is that it's not supported. The medical examiner may have said metrogeny intoxication. The medical examiner may have said in combination with other drugs that the decedent took, that metrogeny was present, detected. Doesn't mean it caused the death. And yet when you hear these parents or family members who say, oh, it killed my loved one. Okay, prove it. And that's why I think that we've simply got to get to the bottom line on this argument. And the only way to do that is to call them out and say, okay, let's have each individual death. And here's the best example in the world. You have a law in Tennessee that was passed based on the death of a young man by the name of Matthew Davenport. Okay, his mother stood up and said that kratom killed him. You see the advocate for the sponsor of the bill get up and say kratom killed him. And you look at the autopsy, and this kid died with a very, very huge dose of Benadryl. Kratom was detected in their system. That's it. Yep. So the correlation, or in any way the conclusion that kratom caused that death, is highly suspect, right? We've had CJ's Law is another one in New Jersey. The mother claims that kratom killed him. Not true. And yet, because metrogeny was detected, and we're seeing the same thing in the Idaho case, where you have the Rastucci case, and the parents claim it was, and they speak passionately, by the way, and I understand it. I get it. You lose a loved one, and man, you just want to lash out. But it ought to be based on the facts and the truth, and their actions now in coalescing behind the leadership of the Kratom Danger Awareness Group it simply has to be justified with the facts. And as long as we're willing to talk about the facts, this is going to be great, because we can get to the bottom line. There's a road show that's going on around the country with Dean Francis, who claims that his son was addicted to kratom, right? We need to dig deeper on that. We need to show him that his son didn't die. He went through a extended rehabilitation and drug rehab program. And the description of what the Cameron Francis went through isn't consistent with the consumption of raw leaf natural kratom. And yet they claim that's what it was. There had to have been something else involved here. We need to look closer at it.
Well, Cameron, if he was sorry to cut you off, but if he was involved in the Feel Free lawsuit, it was Feel Free.
Well, I don't know that he was or wasn't. I don't know enough. I'd love to see that detail if he was. But the bottom line point here is there needs to be some explanation. Cameron has agreed to do a one-on-one webinar with me. And maybe it'll be an in-person event down in Richmond. Glad to do that. Structured in a way that has a neutral moderator. Let people come and ask questions. Again, exposing the truth, as opposed to this narrow field of grief that has been weaponized into now a battle against kratom. And Patty Wheeler's on this road tour with Senator McKell. Senator
Mhm.
McKell, by the way, who everybody knows, prior to his proposing the legislation, posted a social media post. I don't know if it's even up anymore, where he said that he had a client that he believed was harmed by kratom, and then he puts a bill in the legislature. There's some ethical questions about whether that was he was the appropriate sponsor for something for which he had a legal case that was taking place. And then he sits before the legislative panel, and when asked directly by Representative Chevet about the FDA dose finding study, he confidently, without any question, instinctively says that study was funded by industry. And then at the end of the testimony, which by the way was populated with all of these state agencies that came at his request, and obviously trying to please him as one of the leadership in the Utah Senate, were saying what I think pretty much what he wanted them to say, because we have since FOIA, they call it a GRAMA request, and we're being denied the information that led to the testimony that was done by the medical examiner's office. But at the end of that testimony, after about 15 minutes, then Senator McKell holds up his phone and says, "Oh, and let me tell my colleague, Representative Chevet, that I've checked with a friend and I've confirmed that was a study done, paid for by industry." It was not true. It was a lie. Now, McKell's on this road trip with Dean Francis, Patty Wheeler. We need to look more closely at Patty Wheeler's case. Again, tragic that you lose a loved one, but to blame kratom. And what we know about the Patty Wheeler case is that her son was using multiple substances. Now, here's an interesting question, and I think it needs examination, is does kratom interact with some prescription medications? That's a question. We need to find out. Now, here's how you find out. There are surveillance systems that are conducted by the FDA where they look at every adverse event that occurs in the United States that doctors and medical professionals report. Now, a consumer can do the same thing, but doctors report it. And so when there is a death or there is any serious adverse event, it goes into the FDA database for adverse events. And then the FDA looks at all of the data and says, do we have a cluster of events where this dietary or botanical supplement, in this case kratom, interacts with this set of prescription medications? And the solution is that if they identify that, they require the prescription medication manufacturer to put a black box warning on their products. Do not consume this product, this prescription product, with this substance, whatever it is. And in this case, if it's kratom, let's know that. Here's the interesting thing. The FDA has not identified any cluster of deaths that are associated with the combination of those products as a basis for there being a black box warning. But then it's incumbent on the medical examiner to actually identify the truth. And the truth is going to be, it was Benadryl, for example, in the Davenport case that killed that young man. Kratom just happened to be present in the system. Did he drink a cup of coffee that day? The most widely used psychoactive drug in the world is caffeine. Did he? And if he did, why wasn't that listed as the combination of products that were found in his system? So this is a combination of factors that we're only going to unwind when we challenge directly this group of people that have now decided to focus on the wrong target, and they're trying to mislead public policymakers. On the 7-OH side, they want to spread the same lies they told when 7-OH first came on the market. You know, they misled consumers. They told you it was kratom. They still do. I went and ordered a 7-OH product 2 days ago that I expect to get this coming week. And it says on it, advanced kratom alkaloids, still being sold. You think it's kratom, right? It's shocking. And they're doing it today. So they're misleading consumers. 7-OH is not kratom, not by any definition. And yet they will lie and say that it is. And so we've got to deal with that problem. This argument that kratom and 7-OH are the same, peddled by the likes of Michelle Ross, who is lying when she tells people that, misrepresenting the facts, no science to back it up. So we obviously have some work to do there. And then you have this other thing that's going on where you have people in the kratom community that are saying things like, "Oh, you just have to understand that we should live and let live, live and let live." On 70H, you let them take it and they die. And and I'm talking about the Kratom gals. I call them the 70H gals. That's literally what they're peddling. They will say, Madeline Sklar will say, "Oh, I'm not for 70H. I think it was horrible what they did when they came on the marketplace, and they didn't label it properly." Well, guess what? That's a violation of law, Madeline. That's illegal. And so you're condoning illegal behavior. That's exactly what happened. But she says it, and then she says, "But people that are seeking it for pain. If you look at 70H manufacturing labeling, it's all about pain relief, right? That's illegal labeling under FDA law. So we're condoning illegal behavior again." And Madeline says, "Oh, live and let live," and the rest of the group there. You've got people that are out there right now abusing 70H products, and we say, "Oh, just let them." Do we say that about fentanyl,
Right.
morphine, heroin?
And I'm sure
Of
that
course
there's
not.
some heroin addicts out there. I mean, just hypothetically, I'm sure there's maybe one or two heroin addicts out there that are using heroin appropriately, but you don't see us out here advocating for that.
There's
Of course.
that one black doctor that he uses heroin moderately. I remember
Yeah, I
reading
mean,
that
I'm
about
sure
a
there
couple while
are.
back.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm
So
seriously
my
like, I'm
challenge,
sure there's a
I,
couple.
I challenged the 70H gals to, come on and let's have a webinar. They refused. They called me a sexist because I was critical of them. They're only women. What am I supposed to say? They say that I was a bully, and I've got all the emails. I respectfully asked if I could come on the show with them, and Madeline Sklar said no, we're not going to let Mac Haddo, who doesn't agree with 70H, on this program, but we'll have Wednesday Forest Bear. We'll have her on, and we'll have one of her regular co-hosts on who works for a 70H manufacturer and marketer. And to hear that nonsense, oh, well, I don't agree that 708 should be packaged in packaging that attractive to children. For goodness sake, go and look at the manufacturer's webpage that woman works for and tell me that isn't attractive to children. It is all about attracting to children. I mean, this is the hypocrisy's got to end. And then there's the classic. You have Robin Graham sitting there, condemning advocates because they're just not getting out. I said it in South Carolina. There were 24 people that came at 9 a.m. in the morning to a hearing, and they were there. They didn't even get to testify, and they were there. So I don't know what she's talking about, but let's give her the credit. Let's say, okay, it's just it's hard sometimes, and people are just they're lackadaisical. They've just gotten into this slump. I was in Montana at the interim committee this past week, and I knew as I sat there, after all the criticism that I've leveled against Robin Graham for that comment, that she, for God's sake, would be there in person, or at least on Zoom. She's a Montana resident. She was absent.
Did she know? I mean, did you send out see, we didn't even know about the Montana hearing, right? Because I remember you telling me that you were told by somebody, I don't know who, that the out-of-towners weren't allowed to testify. So you didn't even put out an email blast or anything like that for us to get on,
Well, yeah, but doesn't she run the advocacy, that thing, the BAE?
She
I mean,
runs
shouldn't
the
she be aware of
Botanics
stuff like that?
Advocacy and Education. She claims that they have a scraping tool just like we have that identifies all hearings that are coming up. So she can't say she didn't know about it.
Yeah.
Now, she's a Montana resident. I agree that there was misinformation that was put out that if you have to be a Montana resident, but she is a Montana resident. She should have been there, or she should have been on the Zoom. And for goodness sake, I can't imagine what the excuse is. The last time, one of the excuses was she was on the way to a friend's funeral. Okay, why wasn't a member of the BAE there? Why wasn't someone standing in for her? Is she a one-person show? I know that's not true because I know the people that are involved with her. But they like to point the bony finger of blame at the Kratom advocates and at the AKA. And that's what this is really about. This is creating a niche market where they can come in and say the AKA doesn't really motivate consumers anymore. And that's not true, but that's what she likes to say. So this is a scam. And if she wants to prove that it's not a scam, then for goodness sake, show up at the hearings when you criticize advocates for not being there.
in your own state. In
Right.
your own state. You
So-
know? So it was misinformation. So we could have testified then?
You could have testified. The KDA people were out in force, and they were allowed to testify. When I asked the chair later, he said, I didn't know that that restriction was in place. I asked the staffer and he deferred. There was obviously a mix up, but that's okay. It was publicly noticed. It was something that was available to anyone that's looking, and they call scrape
Yeah.
tools on the internet. BAE absolutely knew, or they're guilty of complete malfeasance. They absolutely knew that hearing was taking place, and they didn't show. And that's now the tragedy of all this is, what are you in this for? What is the purpose of it? Is this just a game that you're trying to raise money for a nonprofit group just to kind of sustain yourselves, or are you actually in it for the advocacy? Because I can tell you, it is not easy sometimes to get to these places. Look at all the people that showed up in Philadelphia. Some of them went, it's hard, and you have to sacrifice. Oh, and those are the people that she says, get off your butts. I'm sorry, Robin, get off your butt, because we're done with the hypocrisy of this. And I've invited them. I've invited the whole group. Last night, I sent an email to Madeline and to her colleagues, and I said, hey, let's come on a webinar together. You'll have free reign to peddle your, let's live and let live. Let's talk about that. Free reign to say how 70H is okay, which one of her panelists can say, and that's Rayner. And hey, if there's an explanation that Robin can provide, let her do it. That's the way it is. Now, we've had some of those people say that they want to come to and this is my advertisement pitch, on June 2nd and 3rd. June 2nd is going to be our fly-in day. And on June the 3rd, we're going to have a congressional briefing. We've had an interest expressed by some of the people with this 70H gals that wanted to come, and they wanted to be sponsored by a Kratom vendor. My position is that congressional briefing is open to the public. Last year, when we had the last one, the KDA people were there. That's fine.
Yeah,
you can come, because that is a briefing, and maybe they'll get educated when they're there about what the problems are with 70H, the harms of it, and why we need to take strong enforcement action. The other problem is that we're going to have advocates out there talking to congressional offices on behalf of the American Kratom Association. And I will not permit a pro-70H person, or even this, let's live and let live nonsense, because they are harming people when they say that, to be a part of that. I won't. And if I know who they are, they're obviously going to get stricken from that list, because that's not our message. Our message is how important it is to protect safety. And I'll end with this last point, and then we obviously take questions. The reason we're in this mess right now across the country, and you can see it in Philly and hundreds of other localities, and you see it in the States, the reason we are in this mess today is because of 70H, because everybody is conflating the two. This would not be a battle about Kratom if we didn't have this dangerous substance that's on the marketplace, which the 70H industry is spending millions of dollars to try to tell people, it's the same thing. And it is an opioid. It is highly addictive, and it has the same effects as do opioids. And the fact that the surveillance systems haven't caught up with it yet, although they are now, is part of the story here that we want to tell. And I certainly don't want to put that in the hands of someone who's going to mamby-pamby this and say, let people have the freedom to make their intelligent choices. You cannot make an intelligent choice when the labeling deceives you. You can't make an intelligent choice when you walk into a shop and someone hands you a free sample of an opioid, because it addicts you right away. You can't make that. That's not a free choice. That is a deliberate marketing scheme that was developed by the 70H manufacturers. And I actually thought that the first entry of 70H products occurred in August of 2025. I was wrong. I now have found that those products were being tested and put into the marketplace in 2021. And they just made the big marketing splash in 2025.
You meant to say 23, August 2023.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. Let me clarify that. The first big marketing splash was in August of 2023. Okay. But we now know that the first introduction of these products is in 2021. You look at Vince Sanders in the John Oliver piece, where he's talking about the 70H products. He was the one that made the first market introduction, big splash marketing introduction, in the 2023 timeframe. But he admits that he was in the marketplace in 2024. And he says, I never saw a product take off like this in all my 10 years in the cannabis industry. Wow, it was really something. These people are selling opioids, and their justification is we're making a lot of money. That's it.
Yeah. I mean,
They're
they
not
won't admit
safe.
that.
He
They
doesn't.
won't
Yeah,
admit that.
he has no safety. He says, oh, we have 1 million people that are using it. That's our basis for safety. That's not allowed. It is illegal to do that. And he doesn't care. So
Where the heck did they get that $1 million people or 1 million people use it stat from?
Well, I don't know. I think it's the volume of the number of units sold and their own marketing data. I'll accept for the sake of argument it's 1 million people. That's 1 million people have been put at risk. 1 million
Yeah.
people that are under threat by using a product that was mislabeled, that is illegal to be on the marketplace based on federal law. They can hide behind in whatever corner they choose to hide behind. But it is, and I'll say it strongly, it is shameful for any Kratom advocate like Madeline Sklar to claim, oh, I don't really have any beef in this. I think it's terrible what the 7OH people did when they first entered the market. But to condone its continued availability to consumers is unforgivable and shameful because it's harming us. And that's why we're in these battles. We would have, my estimation, and I know people could criticize it, I'll bet we would have 30 to 35 states would pass the KCPA now.
I agree.
I agree.
Wage. We want to protect consumers. And what do we get? We get these imposters, masqueraders that come on the marketplace with a highly dangerous, highly addictive product, and they get justified by the 7OH gals. Done with them. But when I say done with them, I'm not going to tolerate their misinformation anymore. And this idea, oh, well, Mac's a sexist because he criticizes, and Mac's a bully because he won't just let us say what we want to say. And by the way, I'll invite. They can pick the moderator. I don't even need a neutral moderator. They can pick whoever they want to be the moderator because I'm not afraid of it. I can tell the truth. I can describe exactly what's going on in this marketplace. They could invite Michelle Ross to be the moderator. I'd love that. And let's have it.
She was at the debate last year. She was the moderator.
But I just, at this point, I'll take whatever rules they want, because what is the most important thing? We need to get the message out. We really need to be able to tell consumers what the truth is and not let these imposters be on the marketplace and put them at risk. And in doing so, endangers every Kratom consumer who's going to be banned from access, as we've seen in a couple of states, because of this confusion about 7OH and Kratom. And that's what we're, that's my goal. And I'm ready to go. I mean,
you know what? We need commercials. We need commercials on TV.
We do.
We really
it's
do.
Expensive. We're trying right now to develop a advertising campaign that will just do this very thing, and we're trying to raise money for it. But it's tough. And I'll tell you the interesting thing that's going on right now. In Ohio, you have the Board of Pharmacy who actually, they've got it so wrong it's unbelievable. If you listen to the chief pharmacist from the Board of Pharmacy make her presentation to the Board of Pharmacy late last year and watch the reaction, it was a highly complex 40-minute presentation. She conflated 7OH and Kratom together all through her presentation. If you were sitting there and you were an objective observer, you would have had at least 10 questions. The lemmings sitting on that board, all pharmacists, all appointed by Governor DeWine, sat there and did not ask a single question. And what they determined to do is, one, they were going to have a rule that would ban, an emergency rule that would ban 7OH. They've done that. So that's to their credit. They got that done. But they were going to have a regular rule, which takes a slower process, has more public comment, more opportunity for examination. And they haven't produced that yet. And instead, they put out a rule in combination with the Department of Agriculture, which essentially says the only way that you can sell Kratom in the state of Ohio is in in powder form, no capsules, no form other than powder, sitting in a clear plastic bag. And the minute you write anything on it that instructs people, that means it's for human consumption. So it's a drug. So the judge, but I say we worked with vendors in the state of Ohio to challenge this rule. And the judge heard the case yesterday, and he issued the temporary restraining order and has scheduled a hearing on the permanent injunction. And the argument that the Board of Pharmacy came up with was, well, we never really intended to criminalize people that are using natural leaf kratom. Well, of course they did.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. And we're willing to clarify it, Your Honor. We're willing to change. Well, they've already changed it twice, and now they're going to change it again. What? In order to cover up for the fact that they screwed it up in the first place? This is the dangerous part of this, because but for 7OH, we wouldn't be having these discussions.
Right.
Right. And so now the good part is I think it's motivated the legislature when they see how ridiculous this has gotten in the state of Ohio. When this was described to some legislative staff, they said, wait a minute, you're telling me that they'll let us sell it in a clear plastic bag, but you can't put any instructions for use. I said, that's right. And they said, that's insane. Of course it is. So big battle there. We're going to have a similar battle in Nevada because we saw the same thing happened out there. Confluence again of the two substances. And we're going to see big fights going forward in multiple states, all because of one thing: greedy 7OH manufacturers who want to sell a drug because it's popular, because it's addictive.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody that's not been paying attention to advocacy, but you claim to be a kratom advocate, would see that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Because,
if you're on the front lines, you're seeing it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because the steam picked up in July of last year.
Yep.
And right now we've been so blessed right now that we have not had to attend like 6 hearings a day. You know, it's kind of slowed down a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, so I understand what you're saying about what did Jeff say? Did somebody get
Pick me off.
Yeah.
Yes. 7OH people have.
So, you know, and the fact that the gals don't want to have a webinar with you is truly telling.
Yes, it is.
Truly
Yeah.
telling. So, okay, what questions do y'all have? Because
I
okay,
know Megan wanted to get to Philly for sure. And I know Jeff also had a question about the language regarding Philly.
oh God, it's insane.
Yeah, this is very difficult issue there. An important location, and thanks to Megan for all of her work. There were lots of time and effort put into this. It remains a open question here about how we're going to handle it. I mean, they borrowed this language that these local officials think is good. Well, unless it's approved by the FDA. And what they don't understand is, and this was true in Montana, the people that were criticizing us were saying the same thing. It has to be approved by the FDA. The FDA does not approve any dietary supplement. You can walk into a health food store and you will see hundreds of the thousands that are on the market of dietary supplements, none of which have been approved by the FDA. And I told the individual, Mr. Forte, after the Montana hearing, because I called him out during the hearing for his misstatements about it, that the FDA has no role. And that's what the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act was all about, to stop the FDA from trying to intervene in these dietary supplements and to make them into drugs, right? And force them into the drug category. So the rule is that if you are a manufacturer of a kratom product, you can submit a new dietary ingredient notification if it is a product formulation that was not in commerce prior to October 15th of 1994. That's the rule. So if you assert that you have a raw leaf kratom product, and obviously extracts can't do this, and you were in commerce prior to 94, the burden is on the FDA to stop you from being on the market. They haven't done that, with the exception of one case, actually 2 cases. Then if you enter that portal of a new dietary ingredient notification, you submit your scientific evidence, the FDA reviews it, and they have 75 days. And then they can issue objections. And it's an objection letter. And you can have a discussion. And even if you disagree with the FDA, you're allowed to go onto the market 75 days later. Now, the protection is that the burden is on the FDA, having reviewed all of that information provided by a kratom manufacturer, then has the burden to take it off the market if it poses a threat to the consumer. Now, how many kratom products have been withdrawn from the market by the FDA?
None.
Zero, because it's the burden's on them. Now, how could they sit before any judge and say, "Oh, we think kratom's dangerous"? Oh, ignore the fact that we told a federal judge that kratom, we have not yet determined whether kratom's dangerous or not. Right? The federal judge said that the government had stated that kratom is legal for sale across the country. That's in the federal court record, which Mr. Forte conveniently wanted to ignore in Montana. So this is the factual basis that anyone wants to make at either the local or the state level about this issue, about the FDA approving it, doesn't understand the process, and we need to help educate them so that they understand you can't put a provision in that says that until the FDA approves kratom, and by the way, the only approval mechanism that's available for any product in the United States to have FDA approval is through a new drug approval application process. If you want to market as a drug and you want to be able to prove both safety and efficacy. Safety is important, but efficacy for a drug means that it's effective. You can't just throw in a product that you think is going to help people. You've got to prove that it does. And that's why you see news reports regularly that huge drug companies are withdrawing products from consideration because they haven't been able to prove efficacy. So
there's no way 708ers could do that.
Well, I opened that door to them. If you really believe that 708, with all of your marketing materials, all of it says this will help you with pain, that's their claim. That's an illegal marketing claim, by the way. That's true for kratom too. We've reported over 140 kratom companies that make illegal therapeutic claims.
I can say it. I can say it.
Consumers can say it all day long.
Yeah.
Your experience is protected by the free speech rights, but commercial speech is limited. So there's the challenge for the 708 people. If you really believe the therapeutic claims that you're making, then apply for a new drug application, and good on you. But you're not allowed to have the product on the market if you're marketing a drug, and they're marketing a drug, and in this case, a dangerous drug, because it's being purchased by people who believe it's kratom. It's being purchased by people who think that it is safe, and that's just the bottom line on it.
Over there
about that damned FDA website, I agree. They've got to fix it because it is confusing, and I think that I keep saying this, we're this close, and I think they will eventually do it here, but it's not fast enough. I mean, it's so confusing.
Connie Sanford, I think you're the lady who follows me on LinkedIn, but she says, can we get more science on the official kratom website, like dose studies, the facts about not needing FDA approval, all the new and old relevant science? I think that's where people go. Yeah.
We need to do better. And
I remember you talking about you were going to do an updated.
I'm really working on it, but I've been on the road so much.
Yeah, you have.
But I promise you, we're going to get it out there.
Like, I can't believe how many times a week you're crisscrossing across the country. It's like, and you know what? And I talk about this all the time because I don't do as much as you do, Mac. But when I go, when I'm flying out, these airports are like cities within a city, and you got to walk far and all that stuff. How do you do it, Mac? Do you hop on one of those scooter things, or not scooter things, but the, you walk?
I hustle. Yes.
Man. It is insane how huge these airports are.
Yeah, and I've got my list of the really bad airports that have the long walks. I know what they are.
Well, DIA's one. My airport's one.
Yeah.
Out here in Denver.
Yeah, no question.
Hey, hi guys. Thanks for all the hard work. Wanted to see if we can have an estimated date on the California Senate hearing for AB 1088.
Okay, good news there is that Assemblywoman Baines is now focusing on this, and we're making some amendments because there's some problems with 1088. The restrictions on packaging are too tough. The formulation on 7OH needs to be amended. I think that we're making some progress there, and I'm told that they're going to try to get the hearing done before they break for the summer, so that we may see a hearing in the mid-July or June, on that. And I think they're working on the amendments and that might hang us up. But I think that's where we are. Same as in Ohio, we're amending it right now. They're going to try to get that one out because of this problem with the BOP. So yeah, we're working on this. These are really, really tough issues for these legislators because I live it every day. You guys live it every day.
Mhm.
So we know so much about it, and these legislators they're
Know nothing.
and they're listening to these critics.
Yeah.
They're listening to Dean Francis and Senator McKell. And
Well, my thing
Patty
is
Wheeler.
like when you become a legislator, though, when you become somebody that is elected by
Public
people,
servant.
yeah, I mean, you should have an open mind and you should listen to both sides. Like that should just, you shouldn't automatically be biased because you've already heard from one side. I think that's
Absolutely right. And too many people, Jen is exactly right. Senator McKell refused to
Mhm.
sit down and talk to the AKA, me, or our chairman, Matt Salmon, former congressman that went up there to speak to him. And had his mind made up. He didn't care what the truth was. He just wanted to prosecute his case. He should have done it in a court of law, not in the legislature. He should not have lied the way he did in the legislature. He shouldn't be allowed to lie on the public airwaves. I mean, he was on, I think I've told you guys, he was on a interview on KSL Radio, one of the largest radio stations in the state of Utah. And he said, oh, the Mayo Clinic's done some really good research on kratom. And I came on right after him. I said, that is not true. Now, here's to me, this is the test of a good legislator. If you find out that you've said something wrong, you correct it.
right.
Yeah.
You make sure that everyone who heard you at least has the opportunity to see that you made a mistake. He testified that the FDA dose finding study was funded by industry. He said it twice in a hearing.
And
He knows
KDA
it's-
keeps repeating that. KDA
He
keeps
knows
saying
it's
it.
not true, and yet he repeats it, and he doesn't go back and correct it. And that is really a challenge because someone who is that challenged ethically isn't willing to correct the record. That's really too bad.
Yeah, we need to so Megan, tell Sean thank him for going to Philly, the Philly hearing. And where were the consumers? Where were the advocates? That's what I want to know. It was Sean Zamorano that showed up. It was Adam Sweeb and then Christopher Deeney and Colin from the AKA. There was no consumers or advocates in there.
I thought Allie was there from.
Oh yeah,
That
Allison.
alley,
Yeah. And it's a challenge because of time, notice, and that kind of thing. We're trying to do.
We heavily promoted it.
I know. It's just one of those things that Craig Katz was there too.
Yeah, he did good too.
Yeah, so I think that's a good turnout. I mean, that's not just one or two. We had a half dozen people that were there, a little more than that, and we're going to continue to work with the legislators there in that city council. The voices are being heard. I'll tell you that, and I think that the good work that the Zamaros are doing is just fabulous, and the way we get this done. So we're going to keep fighting.
Yeah, because Megan says, so do we have a game plan if we have 2 days notice before Memorial Day holiday? Because there's supposed to be a hearing next Thursday.
Yeah. And I know that Colin is working with our team to make sure we get encourage people to come out. So we're doing our best. I'm sure Rob and Graham will be there. I mean, don't get me wrong, but we're going to keep hammering on this and encouraging people to participate.
But it's that whole FDA approval thing that's written in that language that just you can't. What?
Yeah,
that's what's written in there.
Yeah, it's something. Kathleen here just said that Vallejo in Louisiana, John Shinholzer testified in the hearing in Louisiana, and she still is unwilling to say she was wrong.
Wow.
When she says there's no such thing as a synthetic, and the truth smacks her in the face, and she's not willing to correct it.
Wow.
But, there are legislators that are so insulated in thinking that their power and their what they think is the truth doesn't need any kind of examination, and they're intolerant of anyone that says something that contradicts their view.
If I'm wrong, I will always admit that I'm wrong.
Yeah,
I mean,
same.
we're humans. You know what I'm saying? We're not perfect. Sometimes we get stuff wrong. There is nothing wrong with being wrong every now and then, but there's something wrong with not admitting that.
Yeah.
Amen.
Narcissism.
100%.
Big egos. That's what it is. Anybody else got any more questions for Mr. Macato?
We do have this one. I don't know if Max saw this. Is Mac, thank you so much for all you do. I'm a severe type B personality, so I would struggle with advocating, presenting, arguing on behalf of Kratom before government bodies. So yeah, we do appreciate you, Mac.
Well, that's
Yeah.
kind of you, and if you have that kind of experience of not being able to stand in front of a legislative body, that's fine. Email. Another thing you could do is just video yourself with your phone and send your testimonial in. I think
Mm-hmm.
that those personal stories really make a difference, and so I'd love to have people do that. And that's just the way it is right now. And with some people, they just either they can't make it, or they just could. Even if they could make it, they would have struggle with it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
understand completely.
The
I
only
totally get it.
Yeah, the only thing like for me, in 2022 is when I first went to my state capital to advocate, with boots on the ground. I got off my butt and advocated. And it's just making that jump. Like you remember what it was like making that jump onto Kratom, and then everything went smooth afterwards. So that's all you
Yeah.
got to do is make that jump and then rewatch yourself. You take notes after you rewatch yourself and you learn from yourself. That's the best way to advocate. I've been advocating on social media for a lot. Oh
Yeah.
God, I'm sounding like somebody else.
It does help though, like and that's why me and Misty do a lot of the lives and stuff we do of the hearings, because it does help to hear other people and
Sure.
what they say and give you ideas, and
Yeah.
so that's it. But it does help to go back and listen to yourself. I can't tell you how many times I hear myself say and I'm like, stop it, Jennifer.
You perfect your own craft.
I just said it.
Yeah, you did.
Connie did ask a question. I know this is we went over this before, but I think she's going over when they do the testing, I guess 7 is gone after a certain amount. There is like a time period to where they can't test for it anymore, and it shows up as metragenine, correct?
The degradation.
Yeah, this is what, according to the one of the chief pathologists with the largest 7-OH largest kratom testing company in the country that has contracts with all of the the local law enforcement people. Their pathologist was down at the 4th annual Kratom International Conference in Florida last year, and he made a presentation on this. And he said, we're starting to see this uptick in 7-OH adverse events and deaths. But he said, here's the problem. He said 7-OH is so unstable that it washes out of the bloodstream very quickly. So depending on the timing of the autopsy, and even if it's fast, it may not pick it up, you will have only what's left, trace levels of metragenine that are contained in most 7-OH products. So his warning to us was, you're going to see a reduction because of the number of deaths where metragenine is the only substance detected because 7-OH is washed out. You're going to see that 1,000 nanograms per milliliter, which was their standard for a cause of concern. He said it may come down to 400 nanograms per milliliters because 7-OH is no longer detected. Now, I think the solution to that is that they need better testing methodology, and you don't always look for the substance, you look for the artifacts. And one thing that informs any postmortem investigation is to obtain the product.
Yeah.
And if they know what the product is, then if it's a 7-OH product, that's easier for obviously a pathologist to examine. But the truth is 7-OH is not going to be present in a post-mortem investigation, even though it may have caused the death.
Okay, so that kind of answers my question, Jen. Remember I was saying the
thinking
other
the same
day,
thing.
I was like, because we interviewed McCurdy and then that NMS Labs when we were watching that presentation. And he also presented again this year in February. He was he had to do it on Zoom on the presentation.
Right.
But so if it's if the metragenine content is low, that means it was a 7-OH product then.
More than likely.
So let's just go off the case of that Dakota kid that died in Michigan.
Yeah.
290 in nanograms per milliliter thing.
Right.
It was 290. That is extremely low.
Would not even hit the radar for NMS Labs. Right.
Yeah. So okay, so that answered my question. That was just brainstorming the other day with Jen.
Now it's detectable, right? And I'll give you an example. Let's how do I express this? Let's say that hypothetically you have a death case and you have the autopsy report that has a tox screen on it, and that tox screen says that the decedent consumed let's say 3 or let's say 5 detectable levels of different prescription medications, and metragenine was detected, but not at a quantifiable level. Now think about that. Not at a quantifiable level on the tox screen, and then the conclusion was it was the death was caused by a combination of metragenine and then these 5 other drugs. All 5 other drugs had quantifiable levels, meaning that you can test it and you actually know how much is there.
Mhm.
And they pop with a metrogeny detected but not quantifiable, which means that it's so low, it's unbelievable. They can't even tell what it is. And they want to call that a kratom death. Anyone who does that is misleading people. And I think you're going to see that evidence come shooting out, that there is one of these premier cases that is being advocated by a mother who claims that her son died of kratom, and it was on the tox screen at a non-quantifiable level, just detected. This is insanity.
Yeah.
The science is ever evolving. I'll tell you what, and it's evolving in our favor.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I've noticed throughout the years.
Well, and here's why. Because as controversial as kratom was, as it moved through the mid 1990s through 2016, it was because of people tinkering with it, smoke shop chemists getting in and putting stuff together, and you had these occasional kinds of reports, and they were all combination products and not pure kratom. And that's why there was such an intense interest in finding out, well, what's the pure kratom, what's the natural leaf kratom do versus these formulations that have been tinkered with. And that's why the evolution of science is important. And here you have NIDA with $100 million in studies doing exactly that, testing, finding out what are the quantifiable limits, what's the levels at which kratom might be a problem, what are the effects. And that's where Dr. Volko is fabulous in describing the difference between addiction and dependence. And the important point there is, if you become addicted, how do you withdraw from that addiction? And what does it take? And we know that it's a difficult drug-intensive process. And you contrast that to metrogeny, which has the same dependence profile as caffeine. In 10 days, runny nose, upset stomach, minor headache, and you're done. You walk away. No medical intervention, no Suboxone, none that's needed. And you'll hear people that you think are experts sit and give testimony, say, "Oh, we treated this kratom person with Suboxone." Well, one of two things is true about that. One, you overtreated them and you get reimbursed for Suboxone, and you exposed a patient to an opioid for no reason, or two, that was 7-OH, and Suboxone's an appropriate treatment. I heard Mr. Forte talk about, or maybe it was the woman that followed him, that talked about resuscitating people with Narcan. Not metrogeny.
Exactly.
Not metrogeny, and yet that's what they blamed.
Yeah, we live streamed the Montana hearing last night, so I could see what we were getting in, or what you were talking about with your video that you posted on the AK YouTube page. Yeah. It was an interesting hearing, and
interesting. Yeah.
And I was at the end of the hearing. This was astounding. The woman, the blonde-haired woman that testified, she turned to me and she said, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from Virginia." She goes, "Well, it must be slow for you to come to vacation in Montana." I said, "I came here because this is an important issue." And she said, "Oh yeah," just dismissed me. And she said, "But you have to make $1, don't you?" I said, "I'm not sure what that comment means. Did I ask you why you're here? Don't you make money at your job? Is that why you're here? Or would you have just done this anyway?" "Well, no, I'm not a lobbyist." I said, "You're acting like one. You're up here testifying. How can you criticize me for defending a position, and you're allowed to do that, but you criticize me because I came from Virginia or because I get paid to be a lobbyist for the American Kratom Association?" This is the kind of nonsensical, almost hysterical kind of argumentation. And it was so offensive to listen to her kind of lecture me about why I traveled so far. She has no idea.
Yeah.
No idea about this. But, that's a cute little thing that they can throw out. And
I hate it when they bring up the whole lobbyist thing, because it's like, that's just part of legislation. Like,
every industry has a lobbyist.
Yeah, it's like, why is it not okay for us to have one?
I'm just still trying to figure out who the KDA lobbyist is. McHale? Is it McHale?
And well, now of
Dean?
course, you've got Dean Francis, who's started an organization that they're cooperating together. And you've got all the KDA people. You've got Patty Wheeler, got Senator McHale. They're all just a cabal. And they think they can run around the country spreading misinformation. Bottom line, it's misinformation. No other way to describe it, because it's not accurate. And, they self-justify themselves because they feel deeply, some of them feel very deeply about the loss of their loved ones. And again, a very difficult thing to challenge them on, because they want that space. And I would never suggest that we challenge them, except that they have now taken their grief and weaponized it into an advocacy campaign. And we're entitled to examine what really happened. What does your autopsy report and tox screen really say? We have every right to that, as opposed to them getting up there. And I don't care how they some of it seems cynically, I guess, a little bit orchestrated. When on cue they start crying. Of course it's tragic. But when you want to do an advocacy thing, don't make it into theater.
Right.
State the facts, make it what it is. I'm not against crying, by the way, but don't make that. And then to hear this, I heard it in Montana. I thought, wow, here's their new thing. We just don't feel listened to.
Nobody's listening. Yeah, I heard that too.
Y'all are the ones that are dictating public policy all over the country.
Of course. What that really means is you're not agreeing with us.
Yeah.
You're not banning kratom. That's what it really means. And they need to be responsible in what they're doing. Bottom line.
Ridiculous. It's just, I mean, it's nonsense, because
this is nonsense.
It is nonsense because they find one rep, they find their champion in every state, who will fight to the death, like here in Tennessee. And that rep will not listen to anybody. They will not back down. They will not listen to the science. They literally don't even care about their constituents that rely on Kratom. Like they literally just don't care.
Right.
And it just bothers me.
They say, I know you'll hear from people that say the Kratom really helped them,
Yeah.
but dismiss them. Just
Forget about them. Forget about them living their lives and, taking care of their kids. And, they're garbage.
And, in many cases, the parents get entrapped in this because they want to express their grief.
Yeah. And I totally get that. I think for some of them, maybe that's the only reason they get that's their reason for waking up every day at this point, and I get that. But, to be hostile and
shut us down.
Yeah, it's one thing to advocate, but it's another thing to stalk and hunt.
Yeah.
People.
Right.
I guess is what I don't really know words I'm trying to express, but it's you cross a line when you do certain things.
Yeah.
That Mac's analogy could be perfect for that. Oh,
I got to run, but I'll tell you, obviously I appreciate this opportunity. And I deeply appreciate the people that are out there on the front lines as you are, and others we saw in Philadelphia, we're seeing it in other locations, critically important that we educate people and these legislators. And this is a good time to do it between sessions. We're going to start a program to do some listening tours with legislators around the country where they get to hear in advance of the hectic sessions.
that's perfect.
So we're going to do that. Those that can make it to Washington, D.C. on June 2nd and 3rd, we need you there. It'd be great to have you. We have a session that will be recorded, not open to the public, at the National Conference of State Legislators at the end of July in Chicago at their annual meeting. But that will be something that you'll see the videos from. That we call it a learning hub, that we're allowed for 30 minutes to present to legislators. And we're going to be doing a number of educational programs about 7OH over the next, obviously 8 months until we get in these new legislative sessions, or maybe it's 7 months. But we're going to be out there kicking butt as best we can.
What is the congressional briefing going to be about? Is it the federal KCPA?
So here's the run of the show. We are hoping that, depending on schedules, that we're going to see Director Volko there to talk about the latest update on science. We're working on it. Jack Henningfield will talk about his submission to the DEA describing why 7OH deserves to be and should be scheduled as Schedule I substance. We're going to talk about the products that are on the marketplace today that are violating the 2% level and the 1 milligram level that some states have. As an advocacy for the federal KCPA, there needs to be regulations on product formulations, and we're going to do an analysis of the deaths.
Okay.
Or is going to be there to lead on that. So we're going to educate these staffers and members about what the span of issues are that really are important in order to understand what's going on. And the good news is that the DEA has apparently reached out for some clarification on the level of 7OH that we're cooperating with right now. So hoping they would get that rule out. They analyzed it and said, hey, we need some additional clarification. So we're working on that, and we'll be getting that out here in the next week.
Who's going to be there doing the analyzing of the deaths?
Heidi Sikora.
Oh, okay. Yeah, buddy. Okay. Well, we'll definitely put the link to register for the DC fly-in. We'll put them in the comments after this is over, and you guys can click on them. You cannot be a 7OHer, as Max said.
The 7OHers can organize their own event. They can
Yeah.
go and peddle their lies as much as they want. It's a free country, but you're not going to do it masquerading as an AK supporter.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I will say that clearly, unequivocally to the 7OH gals. They're not welcome. They can come to the briefing. That's a free thing, right? You're welcome there. But you're not going to participate in our fly-in thinking that you can muddy the water, saying, oh, 7OH is let's live and let live.
Mhm.
Is it Live and Let Die? Is that a famous movie?
I don't even know.
That's like a Bon Jovi song or something.
I thought it was a James Bond movie, Live and Let Die. Maybe I'm wrong. But it's the 7OH truth, Live and Let Die. If you don't think you ought to intervene with it, and everybody should make their own decision, well, they can't make their decision if they're lying to them on the labeling and on the marketing. So anyway,
Okay.
I love you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye,
Mac.
Mac.
All right, see you later.
Okay.